Hi, I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the S.M.A.R.T Performance Podcast, where S stands for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive problem solving, R for rhythmic operation, T for a thriving community, and of course, P for performance. I'm really happy to have Victoria with me today. We're going to have an interesting conversation over the next 15 minutes about building your personal brand and why it is so very important, not only once on LinkedIn, but actually living it as well. Victoria, thank you very much for joining me today in conversation. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Really happy to be here. So I'll try to keep it short. It's hard. I feel like there's a lot. I describe myself as a multi-potentialite, which means I have very diverse interests. I have been in the world of professional services a majority of my career. I got recruited out of banking operations, although the plan was to be a lawyer. Haha. And I've also built and bought companies over the years. So I do have an entrepreneurial spirit. I sit on boards. I'm an author, a professional public speaker. On the personal front, married, 2 adult children, which now makes me feel really old.
How is that possible?
I started young. I'm a dog mom, a fitness fanatic, a foodie, and a wine lover. There, that covers all the bases.
That sounds like a wonderful way to get through life. So it is. Me too. I got five kids, and my oldest one is 33, and it's like, how is that even possible? Right? It is that. But I got married at 19. I got my first child at 22. So it is.
Wow.
You can do the math there about.
That's right.
Listen, it is interesting, right? So congratulations on your journey, right? And it's something that we are all in charge of our own journeys, and often we are the limitation of our own journey if we don't dream big enough. So one thing that we people need to think about is that who am I and how am I going to position myself in this world where competition is fierce and you need to learn to differentiate yourself. And often building a personal brand is key to that. So take me on a journey on how you discovered that for yourself. What steps did you take to be to make that part of your success journey?
So I mentioned that I became an executive at a very young age, at 24 years old, when I got recruited out of banking. Stepped into a very big stretch role as the chief operating officer and general manager for a call center outsourcing company. And all functions of the organization except for finance reported to me. And so I had to quickly, make sure I surrounded myself with a team who knew all of the functional pieces. I did not. But I also had to learn particularly around how do we grow this business? So from a sales perspective. And so I focus very much on how do we build a differentiated company brand. But what I always knew, but became much more prevalent for me there, was people do business with people they like and they trust. And so it was also, how do we create differentiation? One, for me as now the senior leader in this organization, but getting my team to do the same for those that sat in client management and in sales. And so this was 25 years ago. I don't think the vernacular calling it personal brand existed then. But the strategies around creating this sort of unique value proposition for oneself. You said it. You're the CEO of your own career, but also very much from a brand perspective. If you are not curating the narrative, your personal brand, someone's going to do it for you. And so I actually attribute a pretty significant part of my career success to the development of my strong brand. Yes, I'm a strong performer, but it's much more around who am I known as an individual, as a leader. And so then have very, very much focused on that, to the point that when I worked for IBM a number of years ago, LinkedIn ranked me as their number one social seller, and that's their brand, their name for it, worldwide. So now I spend a lot of time teaching others how to build their brand.
Yeah, very interesting. So I'm going to go a little left-hand turn because it'll be remiss. Yeah. So I've interviewed a bunch of young CEOs now in their 40s or 50s, but they started off very, very young. So what was your big lesson that you learned as a 24-year-old executive that if you would have to do it all over again, that you say, listen, I would not make the same mistakes? And what did you learn from that?
I think the biggest lesson I had to learn, and it didn't actually come immediate, Walter, it came a little bit later for me. So I stepped into that executive role as the youngest executive by probably 2 decades. I was also the only female. So that sort of informed how I thought I needed to show up. I entered the workforce into very much a command and control environment, and I thought I needed to show up that way as well. So I walked in there, all business, all the time. I'm not going to show emotions. I'm not going to demonstrate vulnerability. I thought that meant showing weakness. Yet I'm an actually incredibly emotional person. Like I cry at the Humane Society commercials, right? And yet I didn't let that be seen. And I learned a couple years into my executive leadership that I had a nickname as the Iron Maiden. And at first I was kind of like, oh, well, I'm like, well, that's unfortunate. But I thought I've never had a problem making very difficult business decisions, doing restructure, et cetera. So initially I thought it was that. But then I realized that it's actually how I was being perceived, how I was showing up for others. So that was a lesson I had to, or I learned. I had to unlearn some behaviors. I had to do things that made me uncomfortable, like be vulnerable, show some emotion, not be all business all the time. Like, so even just consciously walking into a meeting or having a phone call with someone and starting with a little bit of small talk. How was your weekend? Talk to me about your kids. What did you do? Like that sort of thing, like where I was ready to dive into the agenda. So those are things I needed to shift in my leadership style. I needed to be strategic and intentional. Now it's completely innate. That is who I am as a leader, and I show up very differently. But I thought I needed to be one thing, and it wasn't the thing that made me a good leader at all. And I had to pivot.
Yeah, I suspected that. That's why I asked you the question, because that's been the general experience of people, including I can identify with that as myself as growing up as a leader. So it is important to learn these lessons because, in the end of the day, who you are and how you show up as a leader is part of your personal brand, and it can become an absolutely deal breaker, career stopper if you end up continue to be on that Iron Maiden. There's a limitation to that, right? At some point in time, you run into a wall, and you cannot get people to follow you or inspire you. So going back to the career, so once you understood that how you showed up, how you presented yourself, how did you want to, and how you want to present yourself in a digital format, because obviously, as we started off at AOL, beep uploading our one picture over every 10 minutes to what we have today, the first place people go is to your digital profile to check you out. So tell us a little bit about how you adopted um, your knowledge and your abilities to be able to show up on LinkedIn, for example, and become that number one rated. And what is it that you are now teaching?
Sure. First of all, we're clearly both old that we know the beep, beep, beep. So I'm sure not all of your listeners will understand exactly what that was like and how painful it was for us.
I still have the original W. Dusseldorf at AOL. I said, well, how come you don't put the P on the end? He said, because back in the day we were limited in number of letters, and I couldn't have the P on my last name, so I had to drop it. I still do that today. Now, mind you, that's 27 years ago, right? 1998, I think it was that we
Yeah,
saw it.
yeah.
It was good.
So I am a very early adopter of LinkedIn. So I've been doing it for a long time. Now, when it comes to brand, what I quickly saw is, people, when I say curate the brand, it's not like you become this false character of yourself. You said it, like you need to show up that way in all formats,
Yeah.
digitally, but also, as my youngest would say, IRL mom, in real life. And so, showing up. But, I was starting to see people, creating this facade before we had all the filters of, pictures and things like that. And they focused on one thing, which was, what do I do? People will call that your eminence. Well, like that's just one part of your brand. And so I would see people show up and I would like just sort of almost scroll past them. All they did, it was everything they was also about who they worked for. So job title and who I work for. But you're more than that. So, for me, I believe that there's four like key elements to a strong personal brand. Most definitely it is your expertise, the credibility around what you do, the industries you've done it, maybe some of the successes and failures you've learned from related to that. Definitely. But then it's what makes you you, like what you are a human, like what are the unique life experiences, work experiences? Did you live in another country or work in other countries? Like that experience, is powerful. What if you're a leader, like what's your leadership style? What are the values and things you stand for? And
Yeah.
then the next part is related to that one is, but what makes you different? What is that unique? I call it the UVP, or unique value proposition. In the world of professional services and consulting, you can find people who have the same number of years of experience, perhaps with the same functional expertise in that industry. Great, but why would someone choose you versus another? What makes you different? And so I can very clearly articulate things like, in the world of consulting, many consultants tell their clients what they want to hear, not what they need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the truth speaker. I got a nickname a few years ago as the CEO whisperer. But that's part of my unique differentiation in terms of how I show up. And then the fourth is legacy, and thinking about, like, what do you want to be known for? And so for me, I've now been a part of a little over 40 merger and acquisition transactions, more than 100 corporate restructure. I'm called, another nickname, turnaround queen. Love all of those. But when I die, that's actually not what I want people to talk about. I want them to talk about who I was as a human, that I raised two really great human beings, that I left the community, the workplace, and the world at large a better place when I left it than when I came in. Those are the things I want to be known for. And so I think you need to build your brand around all of those things. And that makes it so compelling that people want to engage with you.
It is what Maya Angelou says, right? It's not what we do, it's but how you make people feel along the way, right? It is really,
Exactly.
so, yeah, I love that. So, in the time that we have left, I would love to talk about the doing piece of this, because I think you laid out a really nice architecture. But obviously, the people who are listening to, I encourage them to take meaningful action. So, tell me, what is step number one you would recommend them to take, and then we can build upon that.
Well, step one is curate that brand. I've got a free one. I'll direct people to my website later. Free workbook you can just go and download. So that's step number one. The next is to be really clear on the goals you have around your brand and your digital and beyond strategy. Are you doing it because you want to win more business? Are you doing it because you want to secure a new job? Because you want to be seen as an influencer to gain whether it's, again, promotions, visibility, things like that. So be really clear on the goal. The next is, who's your audience? You should not attempt to be all things to all people. And so get very clear, again, connected to your goals, who's the audience for that? And then you need to build a content strategy that aligns to your personal brand. So for me, that becomes a mix of all parts of the things I spoke about. So yes, you're going to want to share, if you're working for a company, you'll want to share some of their collateral, some of their materials, maybe some of the research that they do, but you want to share others' opinions as well with your own voice, right? So I'll say, never just repost and, something, what does this mean to you? What did you learn from it? What do you want people to take away from it? But then also content. And not everyone needs to be an expert writer. Now with generative AI, you can use ChatGPT to help you along the lines writing it, but sharing content that, again, aligns to who you are as a human, what makes you different, and then also really engaging. So it's not just like post it and forget it, but continue to stay engaged, because it's also about building the network of people who want to engage with you.
Yeah, and I think it's the network where you left it off. It is where the future comes from often, right? It's a referral if you're in business, if you're looking for a new role. It is the network that you can activate. That is so very important that people underestimate. So I do a lot of work with people who are transitioning. And the first place we go look is, of course, look at personal brand. What is your true why? What's your true purpose? What are your real goals? Let's narrow it down to focus in. And sadly, too many people don't really think about the future all that much, and they don't really prepare for that. And certainly don't, if you do a poll today and ask 10 people, who have you a well-defined plan B if you get laid off tomorrow, I would almost dare to say that 9.5 of those people have not, and only one person has thought about it a little bit. And I think that is something that people need to think about, right? It is to maintain a digital profile, to maintain a personal brand. So I love the fact that how you laid that out. How often, so you talked about content, you talked about, how often should people do this in order to be relevant?
I think it depends on, again, what your goals and objectives are for yourselves. For me personally, I have a commitment to, publishing, 2 articles per month, generally, on LinkedIn. And I am consistent around engagement with other people's content daily. I couldn't tell you exactly how much time I spend doing it, because LinkedIn is a tab that's open on my browser all the time. And when I'm sitting on a conference call, I probably shouldn't say this, multitasking, I'm engaging with content. It's, by the way, like, LinkedIn's made it super easy to do that, to to comment. It tells you when people have promotions. It tells you when it's their birthday or whatever, right? So just, so that it just becomes a habit. That's what I'd say. So make a commitment, block off time. If you want to do, like, you should be in there every day. Ideally, even if it's other people's content, at least once a week, and then commit to, creating some of your own content, maybe once or twice a month.
Yeah. So I live by the rule of 15 minutes a day you too can be. Right? It is that, everybody has 15 minutes. In other words, stop scrolling on TikTok and Instagram and go work on your professional profile and in order to help you pursue your dreams itself. So really, great words of advice. Where can we find you?
The easiest place is my personal website, which is victoria-pelletier.com. I'm sure you'll have that in show notes so people don't figure out. And they can link out from there to LinkedIn and the other places to find me. And as I said, I've written a number of books. On the one that is Influence Unleashed is the book I wrote. If they scroll halfway down the page, I have the free workbook that'll take them through so they can actually start the framework, build it out for themselves.
Excellent. And again, like I always remind the audience, listening to us is great. By Monday morning, you have forgotten 95% of what we said, unless you're taking quick action steps. So as you're listening to this, in the show notes, there will be the website. Go there, download it, start working on that, and make that commitment on your calendar, that 15 minutes a day. Again, it's about continuous growth and development. It's that mindset that is going to help you get across the finish line to whatever it is that you want to do. So give me a parting thought, something that sticks with the audience and gets them motivated and inspired, so to speak.
Sure. I will leave you with my favorite quote, which is from George Adair. Everything you've ever wanted lives on the other side of fear. And so whether it's your personal brand, whether it's going for that next role, that next sale, I think growth and opportunity comes in that zone of discomfort. So I encourage everyone to step into that.
I love it. I use the, Elon Musk says that if you have to stare fear in its face in order to overcome it. And it goes right along with that. I love that fact. Victoria, thank you very much for joining the show today. Really insightful and very helpful. Congratulations on your journey. Listen, there's nothing better than having raised two wonderful kids that are contributing to the world. And that's my greatest pride as well. To the audience, remember that you need to take action. Go to the Apple Store, download the mobile app. Just simple type in the Dutch Mentor. Comes with a 7-day free trial. It will help you get your journey started, and it's focusing on the things that matter to get you to deliver the best version of you, no matter what it is that you want to do. Thank you. We'll see you again at the next episode. Victoria, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.